Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel of Kendra Engineering College. In this video session, we'll learn regarding the memory of ARM embedded system. So when we speak about a memory, we need to know why this memory is needed. So basically when I speak about an embedded system, the embedded system need to have kind of memory to store and execute code. For example, when I say that you have a program to be written, so let's say you are going to write a program or you have some data to be stored. So this program will be written in terms of codes, and this code needs to be stored, and the area where you are going to store this code is called as memory. So before selecting the memory, or when you say that your embedded system needs a memory, or before selecting the memory for an embedded system, you need to compare the price, you need to compare the performance, you need to compare the power consumption, and also you need to like decide some of the characteristics of the memory. You need to decide the hierarchy, you need to decide the width, and you need to decide the type. So there are various parameters what has to be decided or what has to be known before I decide the memory of the embedded system. So in some cases you might be saying that, sir, I want the memory to be running twice as fast as the previous one. So, or you need to say that, or you might be saying that I need to maintain the desired bandwidth, or you might be saying that, sir, the power consumption need to be maintained. So there are a lot of parameters what I need to check or what I need to look into when I say that I'm going to decide the memory for the embedded system. So basically when I speak about the memory, memories are needed in order to store the codes and the data. So you need to store the code and you need to store the data. So the area where you are going to store it is called as memory. So basically when I speak about the memory, as I said, there are lot parameters what you need to check. You need to say, maybe you can say the bandwidth, you can say the power consumption, you can say price, you can say performance, you can say like type of memory, whether it is a permanent memory or whether it's a static memory or whether it's a dynamic memory. So there are a lot of parameters what you need to look into when you're deciding the memory of an embedded systems. So basically when I speak about a computer system or a system which has got a processor, they will have all the memories arranged in some form of the hierarchy. Hierarchy in the sense, for example, let us say this is the user, that is you, and this is your processor. This is your processor which is going to process the data. You are going to feed some data. You are going to feed some data to the processor. So the data that is fed to the processor, how does it travel to the processor and get processed? And once it is processed, how does it travel back to the user? So intermediately, I may be having lot of memories connected. It may be a primary memory, it may be a secondary memory, or it may be a tertiary memory, or it may be a cache memory. There will be a lot of memories which will be connected intermediate to the user and the processor. So here, if you can check out, here you can check, if you can check out, you can see the memory hierarchy that is used in your ARM embedded system. So very close to the processor, you can see the cache memory. Very close to the processor, if this is a processor, very close to the memory, there is a memory which is called as cache memory. This cache memory is basically one of the fastest memory and which is placed very close to the processor. Because of the reason it is fastest, the pricing of this particular cache memory is also comparatively high. So normally the size of this cache memory will be small in terms of KB, maybe in terms of 10 KB to 100 KB. The size of the memory that is placed very close to the processor will be the fastest. The cost of this will be very high, and also the size of this memory will be very small. Next to this cache memory or next to this cache memory, we can see something called as primary memory, or you can call this particular memory as the main memory. This is used to speed up the data transfer between the processor and the, or basically the cache memory, what I can see here, this is used to speed up the data transfer between the main memory and the processor. Next to the cache memory, we can see main memory, or you can say this is your primary memory. This is your primary memory. The size of this primary memory will be somewhere in terms of like 256 KB to somewhere around 256 MB. So comparatively bigger, but comparatively slower, and the pricing of this memory will be comparatively cheaper when compared to the cache memory. The reason why it is cheaper is it is slower when compared to the cache memory. After this main memory or after this primary memory, you can see the secondary memory. Normally this secondary memory will be found out of the system. The secondary memory will be found out of the system. So if you're asking me, sir, what are the secondary memories? Secondary memories are normally the largest and they are the slowest forms of the memory. What are these kinds of memories, sir? These memories can be your CD-ROMs, it can be your hard disk, or it can be any of the uh, storage devices what you are going to use to store the data permanently. But these memories are largest and these are the cheapest. That is what it is given here. You can see here very close to the processor. There is a graph which is plotted with performance bar cost versus the memory size. Cache is one of the smallest memory, but the performance and the cost is comparatively very high. Second comes the main memory. The size of this main memory is comparatively bigger, but the performance and the cost is somewhat less than that of the cache memory. Finally comes the secondary memory, or the memory which is the largest one, but the performance and the cost of this memory is comparatively small and the size of this memory is bigger. Say it's given here. The cache memory. The cache memory is placed between the main memory and the core, used to speed up the data transfer between the processor and the main memory. Provides an overall increase in the performance, but with less loss of predictable execution, or but with the loss of predictable execution time, which means that the execution time of this particular cache memory cannot be predicted. Although the cache memory increases the general performance of the system, it does not help the real-time response. Why doesn't it help the real-time responses? Because the data or the programs or the code what you have written will be stored in the main memory. So even though your cache memory is going to process the data or speed up the processing of the data, the actual data is present in the main memory, which is comparatively slower. So even though your cache memory is present, even though it increases the general performance of the system, it will not help the real-time response of the system. The main memory is larger. As I said, it will be somewhere around 256 KB to 256 MB. Finally comes the main memory. You can see the hierarchy in terms of the sizes here. So you have the CPU, you have the cache memory here, you have the main memory here. After the main memory, you can see the secondary memory. Nowadays, what they have done is, after the main memory, they have introduced multiple levels of cache in between the main memory and the processor. This multiple levels of caches, in fact, speeds up the process of data processing, or the data processing between the main memory and the CPU will be speeded up by this multiple levels of cache. After this main memory, you can see the secondary memory. The secondary memories are comparatively very bigger in size, and they are cheaper and they are slower. Normally they are hard drives or maybe your CD-ROMs, which will be connected maybe within the system or out of the system. So this is regarding the memory hierarchy. Later comes the one more important parameter of the memory, that is your memory width. The memory width is the number of bits the memory returns on each axis. Let's say that there is a processor, okay? Let's say that there is a processor, and let's say there's a memory. Let's say there's a memory. So let us say the processor is 16-bit in size. The processor is a 16-bit in size, and the bus what is connecting between the processor and the memory is also 16-bit in size. So what will the processor do is, the processor will try to access the data from the memory. So in case of this processor, in one single axis, the processor can get the data from this particular memory, and it can process the data and it can send back the data to the memory. Suppose let us say that the processor is 32-bit wide, okay? let us say the processor is 32-bit wide. If the processor is 32-bit wide and if the bus is 16-bit wide, then normally the processor has to go with two axis or two memory axis or two access cycles in order to gather the data what the processor requires, which means that the processor will sit idle for one memory cycle or one cycle until the data is completely accessed. See, that's what it is given here. The memory bit is the number of bit. Memory width is the number of bits the memory retains on each axis. The memory width has the direct effect on the overall performance and the cost ratio. Lower bit memories are less expensive but reduces the system performance. The following table summarizes the theoretical cycle time on the ARM processor using different memory width devices. See, concentrate here. Your processor is 32-bit wide. Let us say that your memory is 8-bit memory. Your memory is 8-bit memory. So processor needs 32-bit of data and your memory is 8-bit wide. So your processor has to wait for 4 cycles in order to gather the data of 32-bit wide. Suppose if your memory is 16-bit, then your processor has to wait for 2 cycles. Suppose your memory is 13-bit, then your processor has to wait for only 1 cycle, which means that this memory is comparatively faster with respect to the processor. As I said you, in case of your processor, what happens in case of your ARM processor, there is something called as ARM thumb 16-bit instruction. ARM thumb 16-bit instruction. So ARM will be executing 16-bit instruction, which will be helping it in achieving the better performance. The higher performance is the result of the core making only a single fetch to the memory to load an instruction. So here basically your 16-bit wide memory devices provide both improved performance and reduced cost. So what happens here is all the instructions what is written in case of your ARM are 16-bit. Your ARM processor is also 16-bit. Suppose if your instruction is a 32-bit instruction, if you are writing a 32-bit instruction, normally what happens is ARM will be reducing that instruction into a 16-bit instruction and your instructions will be getting executed in one single machine cycle, which means that your ARM processor can reduce a 32-bit instruction to a 16-bit instruction and your ARM can speed up the process of data execution, or it can actually speed up the data processing of the codes that are stored in the memory. That is regarding the memory width. So remember here, it's not only about the memory width, it's also about the bus what I'm going to use. Suppose if your memory is a 32-bit memory and if your bus is a 16-bit bus and if your processor is a 32-bit bus, then it is of no use because your bus at the maximum can carry 16-bit of data. 32-bit is available, 32-bit can be processed, but in one machine cycle only 32-bit of 16-bit of data can be carried. So your processor need to wait for one more machine cycle for that, so that 32-bit of data will come inside. So normally what I do is, I'll be selecting the memory based on the size of the processor and I'll be also selecting the bus based on the size of the memory and the processor, which will help me in speeding up the data processing by the processor. That is regarding the memory width. So we have studied regarding the memory hierarchy and we have also studied regarding the memory width of the memory devices what we are going to use. The final thing what we need to check out is memory types. What are the types of memory normally we are going to use in your ARM embedded system? Normally the types of memories are ROM and RAM, or you can say it as like read-only memory and random access memory. Even in case of your ROM, we have something called as flash ROM, EEPROM, PROM. There are a lot kinds of ROMs available. So let's check out what is this ROM. ROM is the least flexible of all memory types because it contains an image that is permanently set at the production time and cannot be reprogrammed. So you may be knowing about this ROMs. So the programs whatever are needed in order to start up the system, as soon as you power on your system, there will be some programs or some instructions which need to be run automatically. All those instructions are permanently stored in the ROM. are all permanently stored in the ROM, which means that you cannot reprogram it. Until and unless you are a manufacturer, you cannot reprogram this particular memory. That is read-only memory. You can only read it. You cannot change any of the contents of this particular memory. That is what is your ROM. See, is the least flexible. Flexible means it is least flexible. You cannot change it of all memory types because it contains an image that is permanently set. You cannot change it at the production time and cannot be reprogrammed. So normally what happens is you would have checked out as soon as you power on the system or as soon as you power on the laptop, there will be a set of instructions which will be running in your laptop. All these are pre-programmed. This instructions are all stored in the ROM. It is a fixed image. You cannot change it. That is what is your ROM. Flash ROM can be written as well as read, but it is slow to write, so you shouldn't use it for holding dynamic data. Now, if you're asking me, sir, you say that ROM cannot be changing the data at all. Suppose I want to change it. Suppose you want to change it, you can go with the flash ROM. Flash ROM is a kind of ROM which gives you a flexibility to change the data that is stored here. For example, you want to change some of the settings, you want to change the BIOS settings. So you can change it. Those particular memories are called as flash ROM. Its main use is for holding the device firmware and storing long-term data that needs to be preserved after the power is off. Quite obvious, right? So once your once your system is turned off and when you're turning on, you need a set of data that has to be written permanently. So flash ROM or ROMs will be holding that data permanently, which is to be preserved for longer time. The erasing and writing of the flash ROM and completely software controlled and no additional hardware circuitry is required, which reduces the manufacturing cost. For example, you might say, sir, my operating system is gone. I need to install the operating system. So for installing the operating system, you do not need any extra hardware devices. What you need to know is you need to know the procedure how you are going to install the operating system. Operating system is also once again a set of instructions which will take care of the system when the power is turned on. You will not press any keys, but without pressing any keys, your system will come back to the state where you can use it. Which means that from the turn off state, if you want your system to come back to the state where you have to use it, then normally there should be a set of programs, right? Those particular programs or those particular instructions are stored in the ROM. That is what this particular read-only memory is all about. ROMs are of different kinds. You can have programmable read-only memory, electrically programmable read-only memory, electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So, lot of ROMs are available depending on your requirement. The second kinds of memory is what I'm going to use is RAM. RAM, as I said you, it's a random access memory. So you say 4 GB RAM, something like that, right? So RAM, what it normally does is it will be storing the applications whatever you want. That is what is your RAM. Even in your RAM, there are two kinds. One is dynamic random access memory. The other one is static random access memory. The other one is synchronous dynamic random access memory. So it is DRAM, SRAM and DSRAM. So three kinds of RAMs are available. This is most flexible for you people. It's the most commonly used RAM for devices. It has the lowest cost per megabyte compared with other types of RAMs. Lowest cost means this is one of the cheapest. It needs to have storage cells refreshed given a new electronic charge every few milliseconds so that you need to set up a DRAM controller before using the memory. So please understand this is a temporary storage devices or temporary memory. If you want the data that is stored in the DRAM to be permanent, you need to set up a DRAM controller which will be giving a refreshing or electric charges at every pulse or every pulses so that the data that is stored in this RAM will be permanent. That is what is your DRAM. Moving on to your static random access memory, this is fastest. This is fastest than the traditional DRAMs but requires more silicon area. Static RAM is static, which means that the data that is stored here will remain until the power is turned off. The access time for SRAM is considerably shorter than equivalent DRAM because SRAM do not require a pause between data access. But cost of SRAM is high. Normally, this is comparatively better than your DRAM. This is comparatively better. This doesn't require any controller in order to make the data stored in this particular SRAM to be permanent. Next set of random access memory is synchronous dynamic random access memory, that is HDRAM, is one of the many subcategories of DRAM, a part of your DRAM itself, which can run at higher clock speeds, synchronizes itself with the processor bus. It is clocked. Internally, the data is first from the memory cells pipelined and finally brought onto the bus in a burst. So comparatively, DRAM is faster. It requires a storage. See, if I speak about this DRAM and HDRAM, both are same. But here, this is faster when compared to the DRAM. But most of the memories will be using your DRAM itself, because most of the memories will be having a cell which can refresh the data, refreshing the data. So this is your DRAM. So from here, I'll be giving the required electrical signals so that the data stored in this will be remaining permanently until the power is on. Or else what will happen is the data stored in this will be permanently removed off. So what we checked out in the memories, we studied regarding the hierarchy of the memory, we studied regarding the memory width, also we studied regarding the types of memory. So these are the three parameters what any ARM embedded system developer should take into account before he selects the memory. He needs to check what should be the hierarchy of the memory, what is going to take, what should be the band, what should be the width of the memory, and what are the types of the memory I am going to use in case of your ARM embedded system. The says the differences are given here. Difference between dynamic and static RAMs are given here. This is made up of capacitors. So capacitors can lose the charges. So if the capacitor should maintain the charges, what should I do? I should keep on charging it. That is DRAM. This is made up of flip-flop. Flip-flops you would have studied. It will be storing the data permanently until and unless you want to change the data externally. Data storage is in the form of charge. Data storage is in the form of voltage. This is smaller in size and less expensive. This is larger in size and much expensive. Storage capacity is high. Storage capacity is low, slow, but consume less power. Fast, but consumes more power. Data losses with the time. There are no data losses. DRAM is used in the main memory. SRAM is used in the cache memory because this is faster. Or SRAM is used in the memory which is closest to the processor. Moving on next, or moving on to the next topic of this ARM embedded system or ARM embedded system hardware. The last component what we need to, or the third component what we check out here is peripherals. So as I said you, peripherals are the devices through which your embedded system can interact with the outer world. The input can be given to the processor via the peripherals, or the output that is processed by the processor can go to the outer world through the peripherals. So the peripheral device basically performs the input and output function for the chip by connecting to other devices or sensors that are off chip. So this is your processor. So there are buses in the PCB. There are ports available. So you can connect any of these devices. The devices what you can see here, the pitches what you can see here, these are the pitches what are normally the peripherals. This can be connected to the processor through which you can feed the data, or the data that is processed by the processor can be taken out. For example, you want some data to be printed. So the processor will be having the processed data, and the data from that should be given to the printer, and the printer will be printing the data. A peripheral device performs input and output function for the chip by connecting to other devices or sensors that are off chip. So whatever devices that are here are off chip. Peripherals are normally off chip. Buses to the peripherals are on chip. Ports to the buses or ports to the peripherals are on chip, but the devices are all off chip. Peripherals here ranges from the simple serial communication device to the more complex wireless devices. So whatever devices I can hear, these are all the peripherals which makes your embedded systems are unique. Also, this devices will be ranging from the very smallest of the smallest sensor to the very complex of the complex wireless devices. Each peripheral device usually performs a single function and may reside on chip. It may be on the chip or it may be off the chip. That depends on the user who is going to connect the peripherals. This is what is regarding your peripherals. The final thing what I need to know with respect to embedded system hardware is, see, the things with respect to this are already given here. So It's been already explained. All ARM peripherals are memory mapped. The program interface is a set of memory address registers. What does this mean? So let me say you have peripheral 1, you have peripheral 2, you have peripheral 3 and you have peripheral 4 connected here, okay. All this will have a address. All this will have address. Suppose the processor needs to give the data to peripheral 2, then this address, the data from the processor will be sent to this particular address, so that the data will come out of this particular peripheral 2. Suppose I need to give some data from peripheral 3, then the processor will be presented with this particular address so that the data of the peripheral 3 can go to the processor. You are getting this point, right? Every peripheral which is connected to the port via the on-chip bus will have its own address. Based on the address, the processor will be able to know which peripheral is actually trying to give the data inside or which peripheral is actually trying to take the data outside. In addition to this, there are controllers. Controllers will be normally they will be trying to, they are the specialized peripherals that implement higher levels of functionality within an embedded system, which we are going to study in the future. Two types of controllers are available. One of them is called as memory controller and interrupt controller. So basically you would have studied, there are, the controllers are also part of an embedded system hardware. So one is interrupt controller and the other one is a memory controller, right? So what we have studied is, we have studied the ARM processor core, we have studied the buses, we have studied the memory also. The only part we have studied the peripherals also. Memories is not studied. So the topic what we are going to study right now is all about memory. We need to study about the memory that is going to be used in the devices, that is going to be used. Fine. So ARM processor is known. Buses that are used in the ARM processor is known. Peripherals whatever are used in the ARM embedded system hardware is known. The only thing that is left out is regarding controllers. The only thing that is left out is regarding controllers. Memories also we studied. We studied the hierarchy of the memory, we studied the types of the memory, we studied the, width of the memory. So, lot of parameters with respect to the memory is also known. The only thing what is left out is controllers, which actually play a very important role in case of your processor, need to be studied. So, let's check out what are the types of controllers. As I said, there are two types of controllers. One is memory, other one is interrupt. Two types of controllers are to be studied. Let's look into them one by one. Memory controllers. So what does memory controllers do? Okay. Let's say you have a processor, okay. Let's say you have a processor, you have memory. This is memory, this is processor. So in between the processor and the main memory, you have a memory controller. So memory controller connects different types of memory to the processor bus. On power up, when you're turning on the system, what does memory controller do is, the memory controller is configured in hardware to allow certain memory devices to be active. Let's check out what is this actually meaning. So let's say that as soon as you power on your laptop, you want your system to be turned on and you want your system to be displaying some of the icons on the desktop. Now who has written the code with respect to that and where is it stored? So that will be stored in the permanent memory. So those codes will be written in the permanent memory. As soon as you turn on the system, memory controller will make sure the data from this part of the memory, this part of the permanent memory will to go to the processor, and the processor will process the data and will make your system ready to be, or say make your system ready for use. That is what your memory controller is going to do. Some memory devices must be set up by software. For example, when using DRAM, you must have to set up the memory timings and refresh rate before it can be accessed. So basically the function of the memory controller is to control the data that is stored in the memory. So how the data from the memory should be going on to the processor, how the data should be stored in the memory, how the data should be made permanent, how the access rate has to be controlled, when it has to be given with the refreshing, pulses, all that is controlled by the memory controller. So this is basically the memory controller. So anything with respect to the memory, the processor has to send the signal to the memory controller, and the memory controller will take care of that particular process with respect to the memory. That is what is your memory controller doing. Moving on, next, interrupt controller. Interrupt controller means, let us say your processor is busy processing something, okay? Your processor is busy with some processing. Let's say you have a keyboard, you have a monitor, you have a LED display, you have a speaker, you have a mic. This is keyboard, this is monitor, this is speaker, this is mic, this is LED. Now what you want is, you are pressing something on the keyboard. That is, you want some data to be given to the processor. When the data has to be given to the processor, as I said, your processor is busy doing some work. As soon as the data is given by this keyboard, what your processor should do is, your processor should accept the data and it should process the data. So what is happening right now is, you are trying to interrupt the processor. You are trying to interrupt the processor. The processor is getting interrupted here, right? The processor is getting interrupted here. So how all this process can happen? So as soon as you press something on the keyboard, there is something called as interrupt controller. There is something called as interrupt controller. What this controller will do is, this controller will raise an interrupt request. It will request the processor saying that someone from outside wants to give the data. Someone from the outside wants to give the data. That is all this interrupt controller is going to do. Whether the interrupt request will be accepted by the processor or whether it will be denied by the processor, that depends on the processor itself. But basically the work of the interrupt controller is to raise the interrupt request. Interrupt controller provides a programmable governing policy that allows the software to determine which peripheral or device can interrupt the processor at any specific time by setting this appropriate bits in the interrupt controller register. So that's what I said. The basic work of the interrupt controller is to raise the interrupt request. Basically, this interrupt controller can be of two types. One is standard interrupt controller, other one is vector interrupt controller. Two types of interrupt controllers are generally available. The standard interrupt controller, what is it going to do? The standard interrupt controller will be sending an interrupt request to the processor core when the external device is requesting a service. Processor can accept the request or processor can deny the request based on the interrupt handler or based on the device bitmap register that has been set by the interrupt controller. So processor need not always accept the data that is given by the keyboard. It can deny or it can mask the interrupt request, or it can say the keyboard, wait, I am doing some work. Let me finish off my work and let me accept the data. Or it can stop the work what it is doing and it can accept the data from the key directly. That is what is standard interrupt controllers work. Vector interrupt controller, what it is going to do is, as soon as the interrupt request has been, let's say that all the people are raising the interrupt request. So this has a priority 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4 and this is 5. Let us say 1 is of the highest priority and 5 is of the lowest priority. So vector interrupt controller, what it is going to do is, if all the 5 people are going to raise the interrupt request at a time, vector interrupt controller is going to send the interrupt request of the device with the highest priority to the processor first, get it serviced and go to the next priority request or next interrupt request. That is what is vector interrupt. There is a vector interrupt table. There is a vector interrupt table in which the priority will be given. Keyboard has got the highest priority. LCD display has the lowest priority. So if all the 5 are raising the interrupt request at a time, then normally the interrupt request of the keyboard will be serviced first and of the LCD will be given last. For example, if I say that nobody is raising an interrupt and LCD is raising an interrupt request, then this will be serviced, because there are no other people raising an interrupt request. This is something like what, you are sitting in a room and you are studying. Suddenly a friend of yours comes to your room and tells you, let's go out, have a coffee or tea and let's come back. So a person coming to your room and saying you are requesting you to have a coffee or tea, that is your interrupt request. What you can do, you can accept his request or you can deny his request. So you are the processor here. So you can mask his request or you can accept his request. You can service his request or you can deny his request. That is what it happens. That is what is the interrupt controller. Or there are 5 people coming, out of which one is very close friend of yours and other one is okay kind. So out of this 5 people coming to you, you will accept this person ka request and you will deny all the 4 people ka request. Or you will accept this person ka request and you will listen to what he says, then you listen to him, then you listen to him, then you listen to him, then you listen to him. This is vector interrupt controller. First one is standard interrupt. Standard interrupt means, okay, based on the request what it is coming to you, you will process the request or you will deny the request. So basically interrupt controllers are of the task of making you or making the processor accept or deny the interrupt request given by the peripherals. So these are the remaining things what we had to discuss in the embedded system hardware. So we have to study about memory, we have to study about peripherals and we have to study about the controllers. In the memory we have to study about hierarchy, we have to study about width, we have to study about the type. In the peripherals we have to study about what are the different kinds of peripherals that can be connected. Finally to the controllers we have to study about the memory controller and the interrupt controller. So this is regarding the embedded system hardware components. Thank you.